my tab is it's a PDF from a university publishing company, University of California Press, and it is a document from the year 922 AD.
922?
Yes.
Like, not 1922, but like over 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
Whoa.
And
they had PDFs back then?
They did, and they were pretty much written on, I don't know, what did they use? Papyrus? The font papyrus. Anyway.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
This PDF, this ancient PDF, was written by a man named Ahmad Ibn Fadlan. So he wrote this journal entry. They call it his journal, and in Arabic it is called a risala, and it means journal or diary or like an account of something or history. So Ibn Fadlan is this dude from Baghdad, and he was born sometime in the 900s, and this is his account, one of the very first and only accounts of the Vikings.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So I didn't realize this, but the Vikings didn't write anything. They were like, they would write their stories down.
Burning stuff.
No, seriously. They did not put any like weight on written word or like stuff like that. They were all oral. It was an oral tradition. So they would tell these tales that were passed down, and they were written later. So like you hear about like Norse tales and stuff, and they were all written later. And most of the things we know about the Vikings were written by their enemies. So all the Christian monks that were like pissed off that these giant blonde dudes were like, give me all your gold and I'm going to burn your house down. And so that's what we know about them, because those were the Vikings that were written about.
I like how it's had the inverse effect where they're just sort of like, let's write a story about how these dudes suck and they burn stuff down and they're terrible. And everyone's like, yes! Vikings are metal as shit.
They really
love
are,
those guys.
But most people just didn't survive the encounter to write about it later, because these guys were nuts, or it was secondhand, and it was mostly Christian and Muslim sources that would write, because they put a lot of, they liked to write things down, scriptures and stuff. So Ahmad Ibn Fadlan, he was what they called a fiqh, which is like it's like a theologian.
Theologian. Yeah, I gotcha.
Theologian. He's like a theologian, like an expert in Sharia law and Islamic doctrine and stuff. And so he was hired by the Caliphate, the current one in Baghdad, to go travel with these emissaries around like the Middle East and Southern Europe, or it's not Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, and be their person that would like write stuff down and like lead people with like religious discussion.
He's essentially, so he's like a reporter. He's like a traveling reporter.
Kind of, but like that's really good at like theology.
It's interesting. He's writing for the religious section of the New York Times.
He is, for the Caliphate, the New York Caliphate.
Caliphate Times, yeah.
For a long time, we only had bits and pieces of his account. And they were mostly from other writers who referenced it as like,
this is, I gotcha.
This is this guy, yeah. But in 1923, the entire manuscript was actually discovered in the stacks of the Central Library of Persian again. Help.
Is Persian or Arabic?
It's Persian. It's in Iran. Mashhad. It's at the library in Mashhad, Iran. This Iranian guy, this Persian guy was like, look what I found! I found this like buried deep in this library somewhere, which, first of all, imagine how much else is in there.
Yeah, seriously.
And he got really excited about it, and everyone's like, dope, we have the full thing. And we're finally able to see all 420 pages
420.
Nice, of this guy's account of the Vikings.
The Vikings.
So let me go back to the Vikings a little bit before I get into the account, because the Viking Age lasted about, this is like the middle of the Viking Age. It lasted about like 790 through to the 1200s. So it was Middle Ages. It was a good, right? And the Vikings we know, we see like in TV shows with like the braids, and they're all wearing like gray and white and black, and nothing like that, sadly.
No, they wore a lot of sequins jackets, and
they were glittery,
bright scarves.
They were like David Bowie.
Their hair was braided, but like into very elaborate cornrows or something.
Beautiful. I don't know. Cultural appropriation. is what
That's
they
why
did.
they were so controversial. That's why people didn't like them. They were trying
English
to cancel them, and
that's not what your hair should look like.
It's not appropriate.
As they burn their monastery down. Anyway, so they get a bad rap. They were actually not called Vikings at the time. They were called Norsemen, or Norsemen. And they get they get a bad rap because, like I said, they robbed all these Christians and Muslims blind, and they were really mad about that. And they had
kind of understandable. I could see.
Yeah, I'd be like, I kind of did this whole built this whole thing, and I kind of like God, and then you just came in here and stole all my stuff.
Kind of not that. Yeah, kind of burning down a church or a mosque is probably not very kosher.
Not a good look, but they didn't care. And they had no respect for monotheism. They had no respect for symbolic stuff, because to them, the gods served them. They did not serve the gods.
Okay, right.
They called upon the gods to help them do what they wanted to do, and they were very much led by that, and led by glory and status like that. And so they would go into these places and steal a bunch of stuff, and a lot of people argue it's because they had a population boom in the 600s, 700s.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And so no one had land anymore or stuff. And so all these young guys are like, let's go steal it. Let's invade England. Screw them. They got plenty of land.
I mean, I'm kind of on board with that. I think it's cool if they invaded England. I would like that.
They killed a lot of people.
I mean, I don't like people who are innocent getting killed, but I do like the idea of England being colonized. I think that's just funny.
Yeah, that's all it is. They got colonized hardcore for a long time.
Oh, did the colonizers get colonized?
Did somebody get colonized? Somebody get addicted to crack?
Hold on. Is the information that you just gave, was that stuff that they learned from the PDF, or that was
no?
That's just context that from before.
I'm giving some context to the fact that we don't really know much about them besides they're scary. A lot of it's exaggerated. They didn't have horned helmets or whatever. That's from that Wagner opera. You didn't know. They didn't.
I didn't know that. I honestly, I think, I want to say it was the 4th grade is when we learned about Vikings, in school. And I haven't really admittedly, I haven't done a lot of Viking research since.
Interesting. That's where you and I differ.
Yeah.
I watched that Vikings show and I was like, how much is this of this is real? Because I'm the worst and love to suffer. And that's when I went deep into this.
I forgot about that show. It was a big budget show too.
Yeah. I mean, they had a lot of it was, they got a lot of the cultural stuff kind of right. The way they interacted with their deities and how women were treated, etc. But the aesthetics were very wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they would wear colorful things. They wouldn't have these horns. They'd have the regular iron helmets, because if you imagine being in battle, you have horns in your helmet. Someone could just grab them and pull you down. It's a stupid idea.
It's true. You said it was from the Wagner opera is where that idea came from?
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
And I only know that one because of Bugs Bunny. So, you know that.
Kill the wabbit, kill the wabbit.
Yes. Which I think was actually kind of poking fun at the Germans, too, because the Nazis loved Wagner.
Yeah. Failed ideology that should not be subscribed to at any point in history.
And if you ever start thinking, maybe they were onto something, you're wrong.
You are wrong. Objectively, you're incorrect.
Yeah, in every way. Anyway, we've really coming out really anti-Nazi. I hope I don't offend anyone. Just kidding.
Listen. Hope we don't offend any Nazis.
I don't want to divide our fans.
Yeah.
Look, I know you guys. Anyway, point is, so this is kind of the Nazi. No, not Nazis. Vikings, which is sad because Nazis have taken a lot of Viking imagery, which sucks.
They stole a lot of imagery from everybody. In fact, they've stolen most of their things.
They're thieves.
Anyway, we're just mad about Nazis today.
I hate them. Look, I'm mad about nothing. And you said Nazis, so now I'm mad about Nazis because I have that. Do you ever have that? I shouldn't even ask. I know this answer. Do you have that unassigned rage inside of you at all times?
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for a place to focus my rage.
100%.
Absolutely.
That's what happened
Only
with me.
Every single day of my life, Hannah.
Every waking moment of my life.
Every minute of the day, yes.
Unassigned rage. I wish you guys could see, just listen to us at the booth. Just what we say to each other. It's a lot of rage.
It's not a podcast, that's for sure.
It's not good.
Yeah.
No. we're not our best on day 3 of a convention. Anyway.
So the Vikings did not wear horned helmets.
No.
I'm sad to find this out.
I know. It's a bummer, but...
Are they at least still braiding their beards and stuff?
We don't really know. There were signs of it. Like, the women would braid, like, ribbons and jewelry into their braids, but a lot of it was ceremonial, and a lot of it was, like, depending on what class you were, like, what social standing you were.
Oh, they had a class system? Oh, okay.
They
but
did,
not like
yeah.
Not like a... Or they had, like, a caste system?
A little bit, yeah. So...
Oh, interesting. Okay.
You were, like, there was, like, chieftains, and then it wasn't as, like... fancy. I don't know. They had slaves.
Go ahead. Well, the Vikings did have slaves. I mean, I guess that's not surprising. Yes, considering that they raped and pillaged and murdered. They're like, that's the one thing that's too far.
Which was weird because they took these slaves as if their slaves were actually extremely, like, diverse. So...
Okay, yeah.
Like...
That makes sense.
It was not... It was, yeah. They weren't the best people,
I'm like,
you know?
Is that good? They're like,
no,
yeah.
It's not, but we do get interesting accounts from, like a Chinese slave that was taken by the Vikings, which is like,
okay.
You guys need to chill. How about that's my hot take. Vikings need to chill. Okay, so point is, Vikings are not all one thing. The thing we think of Vikings, it's like, well, there are different groups, different tribes of them. There's Swedish, Danish, Norwegian, Finnish, Slavic. And the Vikings we're talking about today...
Oh, the Slavic ones, too.
They are, yeah. Because they were constantly pushing outward, trying to...
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. They would just kind of find a new place and be like, this is now ours. And if you try to kill us, we'll absolutely dominate you.
Yeah.
They were good at rivers. They were good at, sieging from boats.
Seafaring. There was seafaring.
Civ 5, then you know that Harold Bluetooth is dope at sieging with boats.
Speaking of shots for every episode that you have to take, every time we mention Civ, someone has to take a shot.
I think I've mentioned Civ on every episode.
I think it's at least 4 times we've mentioned it on the show.
So, one of these varieties of Vikings were a group of people known as the Rus, or the Volga Vikings, named after the river they conquered, or the Varangian Vikings. The Volga Vikings, the Rus, they lived in what is now northwestern Russia. And at the time, they lived along this trade route called the Volga trade route. So this trade route actually connected the Vikings, who had come from like Denmark and Sweden and pushed toward northwestern Russia. It connected them to these huge Islamic communities. So like the Byzantine Empire, this caliphate that we were talking about. And they were able to trade. The Vikings loved trading. They loved it. They got such a high out of it. They loved trading. They loved Byzantine artwork. They loved Byzantine design. So they were always like, give me some of those rugs or whatever.
At least they got good taste.
They did. I think anything shiny. I think they were like, that's what I want.
I mean, they do tend to have a lot of pattern-based stuff like in the Viking artwork that I've seen, huh?
They do, yeah. It's very repetitive. I wonder if that's
like a crossover from that specifically.
Oh, interesting. We don't know because they didn't write anything. It makes me so mad. So there's
were they illiterate or they just didn't write it down?
They weren't illiterate. They just didn't value it as like it was more of a social, like it was more acceptable to tell a tale orally and to like regale a bunch of people of your journeys rather than write it down.
So they would have loved books on tape or podcasts. Yes. Is what you're saying essentially.
They're us, minus the burning of mosques and monasteries. Everybody disagrees about like what language they spoke, where they came from, but what we do know is that they are Viking people, and they did settle on these banks of the Volga River in Russia. And so there's some positive. Before I get into all the negative reviews of these Vikings from this one guy, I want to say one of the positives was by, again, a Persian guy who is a trader, and he was like, they have no estates.
Not a traitor, but like a one who trades.
A trader. Trades.
Yeah, okay.
He was a trader. No, yeah, he was a trader. And he said in his account of coming across some of these traders, these Viking traders, he said, they have no estates, villages, or fields. Their only business is to trade in sable, squirrel, and other furs. Their clothes are clean, and the men decorate themselves with gold armbands. They treat their slaves well, and they wear exquisite clothes, since they pursue trade with great energy.
how little we have changed over the course of 1,000 years.
Wait, explain.
The Persian guy is just like, listen, these guys are very clean and they dress well and they care about their appearance.
And that's all that
matters. They're not scruffy and gross. Yeah, that's all that matters. They wear nice shoes.
That's literally what he wrote. He's like, they like to trade and they look good.
They like to trade and they look good. I can work with these guys. Just could have been written yesterday, honestly.
Oh, isn't that funny how that kind of, I mean.
Culturally, it just sticks.
Yeah.
It's just been there for like well over 1,000 years.
Thousands of years.
We're very clean. We're very obsessive about being clean, particularly Persian men.
On to the point.
Yes.
Now we're back. I laid some background where we are. We're in the Volga River Valley. We're in Baghdad. We're all over the place. Now we're back to Ahmad Ibn Fadlan. I keep saying Fadlan because in Welsh the one F is pronounced like a V, and he's a vaudevillian actor. Yeah, no. Ahmad Ibn Fadlan. Ibn Fadlan was an Arab traveler and theologian, like I said, and he was part of this diplomatic party, and they were on their way to what are now known as the Bulgarians. So this caliphate that was based in Baghdad had just managed to, when you turn someone into a new religion, what's it called?
Converted.
Thank you. They had just managed to convert these old Bulgarians. And so what they would do would be like, okay, we converted these people, and now we need to go make sure they're following our rules. So the caliph was like, you guys go, I'm going to send some eunuchs and the guy that's good at like scripture and stuff. And you're going to go make sure that they have all these laws and that they're actually following them. Because if they're going to be Muslim, they better be really good at it.
They better be good at it. Basically, they send like a hall monitor to check up on them.
Pretty much.
They're like, you're the RA now for this section.
For this section of, for Bulgaria. You're the RA for Bulgaria, and you got to make sure they're following Sharia law.
Following the rules.
They start traveling, and they do this huge, I have a map of like where they started and where they went. It's actually kind of cool. I'll post it. And they made their way through Iran and Turkey and Ukraine all the way up into Russia. And when they arrived at the Bulgar capital, it was 922. And they get there, and our man, Ibn Fadlan, was like, here's some gifts from the caliphate, and here's some letters from him being like, please be good Muslims. And the king of the Bulgars was like, where's the money? And Ibn Fadlan was like, we don't have it. We don't have money. What are you talking about? Turns out they converted because they wanted the protection of the caliphate and hoped they would send them money because to build doesn't matter. What matters is he wrote that really quickly and then got straight on to writing about Vikings because he didn't care about anything else. So he was like...
mid-sentence?
Yes. He was like, anyway, he was mad. We didn't have money. Whatever. These guys we met. These guys are huge. He's like that. So here's what he said about them. I have seen the Rus as they came on their merchant journeys and encamped by the river. I have never seen more perfect physical specimens.
Oh. Somebody was interested.
Hot. Tall as date palms, blonde and ruddy. They wear neither tunics nor caftans, but the men wear a garment which covers one side of the body and leaves one hand free. Each man has an axe, a sword, and a knife, and keeps each by him at all times. And he goes on to describe what the women wear, and
there's women there too, sure, why not? But my body quivered when I saw all these tall date trees of men.
Just blue-eyed, scary, actually. They were actually kind of scared of them too. Like he goes on later to be like, they have these crazy blue eyes and they're massive and I don't know what to do. So the women wear like neck rings of gold and beads, and then he says each man from the tip of his toes to his neck is covered in dark green tattoos. So
crazy.
He was like, whoa, this dude is, I mean, that kind of sounds cool, right? Like a bunch of like
sound
dark
crazy, yeah.
Emerald. I just love how he's
tattooed.
Like from the tips of his toes.
From the tips of his beautiful toes that were well manicured. All the way up to his braided hair.
And his horned helmet.
I didn't realize they were fully tattooed.
Yeah, these ones were at least. We don't really know other ones.
They almost look like lizards if they're just all green.
They kind of remind, yeah. Anyway, so they start to spend time with these guys, and he's observing them and what they do, and he gets to watch them trade and how they converse and how they party and how they have sex and how
that's his favorite part. He's like, show me your ways.
Except he's repulsed.
Quote unquote.
He's disgusted. He goes on to say, they are the filthiest of all Allah's creatures. They do not clean themselves after excreting or urinating or wash themselves when in a state of ritual impurity, and in parentheses, after coitus, and do not wash their hands after food. Indeed, they are all like asses that roam.
Man, I'll tell you what. I will have a rat prepare my dinner before I will have an ancient Viking do it. Changing my answer. Rat, 100% yes.
100%.
Viking, absolutely not.
Not at all. He pees and poops and has sex and then doesn't wash his hands. Disgusting.
Just hand sanitizer, man, a little bit.
Kaveh, it gets way worse.
Oh, gross.
You ready for this?
I don't know if I am.
You're not. So as he observes them, he gets more and more grossed out. He's just like, I can't not write about this. He writes so many pages about how gross these people are. He's like, because, Muslims are even like way back then were very particular about cleanliness, and they would bathe like 5 times a day.
Yeah, you got to wash all the time. Yeah.
And which is also why they didn't get the plague as much as the Europeans did.
Yeah.
Turns out washing your hands helps.
Yes.
But the Europeans were like, they must be the devil then. Love us. We're the worst.
Wash my ass with water? What's that? No. Toilet paper.
You're right. We're disgusted. See? 1,000 years later, nothing's changed. Still gross.
Listen, bidets are readily available now, and they're great.
They're fine.
That would be a good Viking brand bidets.
And it's nothing. The box is empty.
Yeah.
Ibn Fadlan is like totally not into them anymore. Now he's like, ugh.
He's like, I thought I liked you, but now I don't.
You're so gross. You don't wipe
your butt. You ruined it.
And he's like, they're covered in hair. This is disgusting. Because another thing is that there was also, they have very like strict rules about hair and,
not cutting
how
it.
to cut it and not cut it, or when to cut it and where you should have hair and what's gross and what's not. So he was fully grossed out, and he goes on to say, sorry.
Like how this ancient document is like, we unearthed this document of this man just talking shit about how disgusting these people are.
300 pages. And he like barely did his job. He's like, we met with the king and it wasn't good. He wanted money. Anyway, these guys, like, he was like, rule of his thoughts.
Sounds like a conversation with my mom after like a wedding. And then this person's outfit was ugly, and this person smelled weird, and this person's food was trash.
Okay, so here's what he says. This is so gross. Okay, quote, they cannot, of course, avoid washing their faces and their heads each day, which they do with the filthiest and most polluted water imaginable. I shall explain. Every day, the slave girl arrives in the morning with a large basin containing water, which she hands to her owner. He washes his hands and his face and his hair in the water. Then he dips his comb in the water and brushes his hair, blows his nose, and spits in the basin. There is no filthy impurity which he will not do to this water. I know, that's so vague. When he no longer requires it, the slave girl takes the basin to the man beside him, and he goes through the same routine as his friend. She continues to carry it from one man to the next until she has gone around everyone in the house, with each of them blowing his nose and spitting, washing his face and hair in the basin.
Imagine how bad they smelled.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine? Sick. Imagine what that water looked like.
Oh, I don't even want to think about it. It's just like algae. It's not even real water, too.
And so he did also notice, exactly, it's like snot. He did notice that when one of them fell ill, that they would just quarantine him. And that was an interesting thing to him. And he was like, they just send him off into a tent and hope for the best. And if he comes back alive, everyone's like, yay! And if he doesn't, then they let the animals eat him. So they were, I'm
kind of into that.
Same. They were aware of like sickness and like, hey, don't get near us or we're all going to die. And he also noted
they weren't
that
masking back then in the year 922.
No. He also noted they were having dinner and he was just watching everybody because sometimes he said, sorry, I love this man so much.
I know, he's so judgmental. I love it.
Gossip with him.
Oh, there's so much tea.
He says they're addicted to alcohol, which they drink day and night. Sometimes one of them dies with the cup still in his hand. So,
dear Lord,
he's sitting there watching them eat dinner, and sometimes they're just so drunk they die. And he noted that they would just pass women around during dinner. And
dinner,
yes, everyone got a turn. And he was like,
like in the middle, like you're eating your sausage pie, and then you're like, hold on, and then you put it aside, and you take her to town, and then pass her over.
Absolutely.
Think of the indigestion.
I know. I can't do that on just after eating.
Or during eating.
That's true. Anyway, he watched them trade and he thought it was interesting. They were really into trading. They were very shrewd traders. And they almost kind of did it because it was like a novelty. They were like, yeah, we're going to trade. We could easily kill these guys, but we're going to trade with them.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
I get that. It's like, because getting the deal is the fun part of it. Yeah.
That part of your brain that loves,
negotiating.
Triumph. Yeah, negotiating. Another interesting thing he noticed, this is actually really helpful for us historically because we don't have very much firsthand account of Viking burials and Viking funeral things. So while he was staying with them, one of their important men died. And he watched one of the most unhinged ceremonies that even now I'm like, what? So he goes on to say, this dude dies. Okay. And the first step is that, just picture this guy. This guy's just kind of watching like, what the?
Okay.
They place him in a grave, and no one goes near it for 10 days. They put a canopy over it, and they let him sit in this grave for 10 days, buried. The place I like to be.
Right.
And second step is
9/11. I'll just put it in there because you said yours. Yeah.
There, take your drinks,
we got
everybody.
It out of the way. Yeah.
So 5. After that,
in the grave for 10 days, yeah.
While he's in the grave, they do all these preparations, and they gather his possessions, and they divide them up between his family, and then I think they use some of them to, like, trade for alcohol, and they get so wasted that sometimes people die. They get just blasted. Like, he went on for a long time about how gross it was, how drunk they were. And during this feast, where they're all getting drunk, someone gets up and says, okay, everybody, all of this guy's slaves, who among you will die with him?
Oh, no.
And it becomes like this thing where they're like, no, I'm going to die with him. It's me. And some of them volunteer. And once you say, I will, you're held to that. If you go back on it, they'll kill you. So you're either going to die a coward.
Way.
Yeah. You either die a coward or you walk up to the person who kills you. Anyway, so it's usually one of the slave girls, one of the ones that carries their snotty basins of water around. So in this instance, a slave girl said, I'll do it. And the next step is they go to the bank of a river. Ibn Fadlan goes to the bank of a river and he notices that they're preparing this big boat. And this is where you start to see like, oh yeah, Viking ship burial.
Yeah.
They start, these slave girls covering it with cushions, and there's this giant woman who's old and gigantic. He calls her a giantess. And she's known as the angel of death. And she is this, like, imagine you're like, I'm the biggest person in this tribe. I guess I'll grow up to be the angel of death. Anyway, she's this old, gigantic lady who goes and like dresses the body. And she is also responsible for killing the slave girl who volunteers. So remember, the guy's still on the ground. They've chosen the slave girl. They have this boat ready. So this old lady, the old crone, like spreads, like makes it look pretty. And then she's like, okay, slave girl, get over here. It's time for you to die. And she just straight up kills her and puts her on this boat. And they then go to his grave and they pull him out of the earth. They dig him up. And at this point, he's like very decayed. And he's like turned black from the cold earth. And they fill his grave with like fruit and mead and mandolins. And then they put him in there with his dead slave girl. And dress him up nice. They bring all of his weapons, and then they take 2 horses, and they ride the horses till the horses die of exhaustion.
What?
Yeah. And then they cut those in half, the horses, put them on the boat.
Oh.
Then they bring cows, and they cut them in 2, and put them on the boat. So here's so if you can picture, there's this boat full of just carcasses of animals and a slave girl. Food, cushions, couches, beautiful things, Byzantine designs, and the cold, dead body of the chieftain. And then they bring some more animals.
So this is when it's the chief, not like just every funeral. This is when it's like a big... This is a big deal when this person dies.
Or like a more important guy, like a warrior or something.
Yeah,
but like,
this isn't like your run-of-the-mill lower guy.
If it's just a regular guy, they just they just let you get eaten by animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention, the part that he writes a lot about because he's truly deeply disturbed by it. Before they sacrifice the girl, everyone gets a turn.
Oh, of course.
Of course. And they all say it. The ritual is she goes tent to tent and she's like, I'm about to die, so let's do this. And each guy has his, takes his turn and says, say to thy Lord, I have done this out of love for thee. So
deeply upsetting.
Very. So pretty much they bang this lady and they're like, tell him that I love him when you get to wherever you're going. Tell him I did this for you because for him because I love him. And then they kill her. Anyway, you can go read about, if you want, you can go read the details of this, but it's truly horrific.
I think I'm okay. I think I got it.
Oh, I've just skimmed the surface.
Oh.
I did not go into the details of
what
happened.
Remind me, the Vikings, what's their relationship to the afterlife at this time?
Probably, I don't know. We don't know. They go on to like be heroes, like, whatever it is, Valhalla.
The assumption, though, I think for most of the world here is that there's something else, right? It's not like, they're not atheists, obviously. They're like,
no.
It's sort of like this Egyptian thing where you're like, we're going to bury you with all your shit. So when you go to the next life, you'll have all this stuff.
And yes, exactly. And Valhalla or whatever, you're going to be.
Right.
You're going to be in paradise.
So even this, theoretically, this slave girl is like, cool, I get to die and go to this other place. So I'm not like.
It's an honor.
Carrying around snot water as much, in theory, right?
In theory,
that
it's
could
an
be
honor.
The only reason I could think of that anyone would want to even volunteer to do this.
I don't have to watch them. I don't got to be passed around.
Or are you
anymore.
just doing? Are you a slave girl in the afterlife? Like, do you continue doing this?
Oh, interesting. I don't know.
You got to do this job forever?
I should look that up.
It's deeply upsetting.
I'm so sorry.
Deeply upsetting.
I'm editing.
Hot
this.
take. I don't like slavery. Hot take.
Me neither.
It really upsets me.
Hot take. I also don't like it. Like, I'm just reading this dude's account, and he is so horrified by it that he's speechless. He's just watching this, being like, "Sorry, we just bury our people, man or woman. We do whatever we want." And so he's this guy who comes from a very structured civilization that has cities and government and religious orders and funeral rites where you put them in the ground and you have a funeral. And he's watching this poor woman and this guy and this lady who's this gigantic lady. Imagine being like a shorter Middle Eastern dude. And you're like, that woman is 7 feet tall.
You're right.
And she's called the Angel of Death. Like, I'd be like, please, Kate, let me go home. And so they put her on the thing with him, and then they light it all on fire, and that's where the boat burns. So
I hate to say this, but at least she's killed, because I thought you were going to be like, then she goes on there and then she gets lit on fire, which seems that's where I thought this was going. So
they kill her.
Least...
The Angel of Death kills her. Anyway, so that's the funeral thing, and he was just like, and he talks about how he's standing next to one of the roofs during the funeral. And he hears the Rus guy talking to his interpreter. And he's like, well, what did he just say to me? And the interpreter is like, he said, you guys, the Arab community, are stupid. And I asked, so here's what he says. So I asked why. He said, you go and cast into the earth the people whom you both love and honor most among men. Then the earth, creeping things and worms, devour them. We, however, let them burn for an instant. And accordingly, he enters into paradise at once in that very hour. And then he burst into immoderate laughter. So this Viking's like, you guys bury your people? That's stupid.
Losers, yeah.
All the while, this poor guy is just like, huh?
What is happening?
We're stupid. Anyway, so that's the funeral. Now, there's 300 pages of this. So if any of you want to go read some of this, I don't recommend it. It's disgusting.
Did you read the whole thing?
Yes, I did.
Really? That's impressive.
No, not all 400 pages, because it's this is an edited. The one I found on the University of California Press has like condensed, because he also writes a lot about like day-to-day things, which I actually find fascinating. Like, here's what we ate, and here's how many people are here, and here's who's sick. Like, I like that kind of stuff. So if you want to find the real one, it's very long, but it is a great translation. And the way he writes is very good. And you can really feel his disgust in every word he says about these people. Anyway, I just love the idea that like modern day white supremacists are like, we want to be like the Vikings. And it's like,
better stop showering and just putting snot in your face.
You better become the worst people on earth, because I just love that that's their idea of like this romanticized, like, perfect race. They're just these gigantic freaks who literally drink themselves to death at dinner and then are horrible to their slaves. I hate the word slave. I hate that. I hate saying like, even talking about like a person being owned is so yucky.
Yeah,
anyway,
it is. It's very upsetting.
You good?
Am I good? Yeah, why?
Yeah, just grossed you out.
No, I was really like involved. I was very emotionally like invested in your story.
Yeah.
Also, I was trying to not interject as much as I do every episode and derail it. I was trying to be better about it.
No, I like it.
No, I know, but you were on. You had a rhythm. I'm saying I was trying to like let you play it out.
Okay.
I'm smart enough to know that like I don't have to interject.
Point is, if you want to hear more about this, have you ever listened to Dan? No, what's his name?
Dan Carlin.
Yeah, Hardcore Histories.
Yeah, Dan Carlin.
Yeah, he does a really a really cool like two-parter on of the Vikings, and goes into like everything. He mentions this guy's journal, and you can also see, I mean, this is just one account, so obviously they're not all like this. There's also other people who've written about the Vikings very favorably.
Hashtag not all Vikings.
Hashtag not all Vikings drink each other's or bathe in each other's snot. But that series is really good, and it's free on Spotify or whatever, wherever you get your podcasts. And
wherever you get your podcasts,
you get to like actually hear about some other accounts of them and the way they worshipped and did stuff. And this is just one. This one was important because it's a very rare firsthand account. And
okay,
I just love picturing this poor guy just being like, what?
Horrified.
I went to school to learn about the Quran, and now I'm watching this dude like
slit the throat of this poor woman, and then chop a horse in half that got ridden to death, and then throw a cow on top of it,
and then tell me I'm stupid.
Tell me I'm stupid, and then light them all on fire.
Anyway, that's my horrific tab. There it is.
That was quite the tab.
It was horrific.
Okay, let's pull up our windows.
I feel like I made you go speechless a little bit.
It was a little bit shocking. I felt like I was literally that guy writing the PDF story.